Hey, welcome to another video with Bogdan Majewski where we make algebra easy just for you. In this beautiful video today, we'll be working with factoring trinomials without guessing. So I want you to learn the proper way that always is going to serve you, whether you have factors that you need to find when factoring trinomials and with coefficient a greater than 1. Maybe you have fractions involved in your trinomial, negative sign. Whatever the difficulties is, you will be able to manage and to solve it properly. So no more guessing means you have to recognize patterns when working in mathematics with algebra expressions. So once you have those patterns down pat, you'll feel more confident, your competency will grow, and you'll feel very confident when solving questions of that particular type. So with my beautiful magic pen, boom. So this is the pattern that you have to recognize. First off, we have to recognize that we have a trinomial of the second degree. So we have a coefficient a, whether it's a 1 or any other number, positive, negative fraction, we don't care. We have a coefficient b because the term of the second term is degree is 1, and then we have a constant. So we have a trinomial, quadratic, linear term, and constant. Then the strategy is always going to be the same. So you're finding two numbers that multiply to AC. So A times C will be the product, and then the sum will be represented by the coefficient B. So that's the pattern. Our goal is to find the product and the sum, and once we have those two numbers, we will do the decomposition because we split the middle term in and then group the trinomial into two groups of two, you'll see in a moment. Then we factor each group again, and we have it. And always check your work. That's the goal. When you finish, you check your work. So let's go. In this beautiful example that you see, we have a trinomial that shows 6x squared plus 17x plus 5. So first thing you do, identify, do I have coefficient A, B, and C? Bingo. Then the product is established as AC, which is 30. We don't really care how much is the answer, but we need to be aware what two factors create the product. And I'm going to explain you in a second why this is more important. And the sum is just a number that you read from coefficient B. Knowing what the factors are, you can always split them into smaller chunks. For example, 6 is 2 times 3 times 5, and you start playing around because the product is 30 no matter how you multiply in which order. But once you group them in a certain way, you create two numbers where the sum is 17 in this particular case. So, for example, connecting 3 and 5 and then multiplying it by 2 would do the job. If I were to do 2 and 3, which is 6, and then 5, so 6 plus 5 is 11, so the sum is not good for this application, and it has to be 17. So hopefully this makes sense. So 15 times 2 is 30, but 15 is 3 times 5, and the remaining factor is 2. So 15 plus 2 is 17. Everything is done. Beautiful. And then you proceed from this step into decomposition. So you will change the middle term into sum of 2. Right? We always add, whether we have positive, negative numbers, we'll express it as a sum. So 2x plus 15x is your 17. You copy the first term, 6x squared, and you copy the last term so that you have everything in place. Now we have two groups of 2. In no particular order, as long as you identify one group of 2 terms, another group, bingo. Then you look at each group separately. You look at each group, and then you factor by looking for the common factor for that particular group. So 6x squared and 2x, the common factor is 2x. And you input 3x plus 1, because when you divide it by 2x, by 2x, you get what you get, 3x and 1. And then the second group, you do the same thing. You have your second group, you see what is the common factor, 15x and 5. So the factor is 5, and then you divide by 5, you get 3x, and then divide by 5, you get 1. And this is a very important step. Don't miss it. Once you factor each group, you must generate a new binomial which is identical for both parts. It has to be the same. If it's not the same, then something went wrong. The factoring is not going to work, because this new binomial, which is a common factor now, is being factored out, and then you input 2x from the first part and then 5 from the second group, and you have factored form. Beautiful. So this is where the work is completed, and this pretty much completes this example. So you either have trinomial in expanded form. This is your trinomial in factored form, and you always check, right? You multiply together those two binomials, and then you get in the process 3 times 2, 6x squared, 15x plus 2 plus 5, and you start noticing that you're getting what you wanted to get in the first place. So that's your example number 1. The next example, it is a beautiful example because it's going to show you negative coefficients so that you will feel confident whether you have them in positive numbers or in negative numbers. So the process is the same. Patterns. You have a trinomial. You have a second degree trinomial, right? You have 2x squared term, you have x term, and then you have a constant. Then you identify your coefficient A. So you have to be organized. It has to be, your question needs to be expressed in that descending order. So A is always part of x squared. Term with x to the power of 1 is having a coefficient B. So that doesn't change. Once you have this organized, you will follow that. And the last constant term is your C, and then you grab the number 6. So the product is A times C. So this is negative 2 times 6. We know it is 12 because small numbers, but we don't really care. All we care is about it, how to split this product into smaller chunks, not how much is the answer. What do I do with each factor? Can I split it apart? The sum is just -1, so there's nothing to work here. So we go back to the product. So we have -2, which is already in its simplest form. 6, you split into 2 and 3, and then you play around with the numbers. So 2 times 3 is 6, plus -2 would not get you -1. So you start by trying out different possibilities. You have only 3 here. So -4 is 2 and -2, and factor 3. Why this is a good choice for this particular question? Because -4 plus 3 is -1. So bingo, you have those two numbers figured, and you proceed to the next step, which is decomposition, so that you split the sum, -1, and express in terms of -4x plus 3x. So you have 4. You have instead of trinomial, you have quadrinomial. You have 4 terms. You group them. First group, second group. No particular way in which you can group it. You can group in many different ways so that you can always achieve the same result. So if you group the first 2, the common factor will be -2x. So you have it right here. When you divide by -2x, this and that part, you get x plus 2 as a new binomial. Then you proceed to the next group. 3x plus 6, common factor is 3. You take out common factor, you divide it by 3, and you get x plus 2 again. Remember we said you must get the same binomial. So this way you know you're on the right track. So we have the same binomial, which is now a new common factor, which shows up in the next line below. x plus 2 is taken out. So then you put inside negative 2x plus 3. But I put it in different order because I like to show positive number and then negative, because the sequence in which you add numbers, it doesn't matter. You can add them negative plus positive or positive minus negative, and you get the same result. So 3 minus 2x is a good form. So we have the solution. This trinomial in expanded form has been expressed in factored form. You check your answer because you know it's a good habit, and then you multiply it so that you have 3x, then you 2 times 3 is 6, then you have 2 times negative 2x is negative 4x, and then x and times negative 2x gives you negative 2x squared. You rearrange. The highest degree term comes first, so this is why it's negative 2x squared. Then the next one, you combine like terms 3x and negative 4x, you get negative x plus 6. Bingo, we have it. So hopefully now we have even better idea. You don't worry whether you have positive or negative numbers. You always are able to factor. And the last example that I have for you right here is a trinomial with fractions. We don't like fractions, we can say, but we say from now on, we don't care. We can deal with those questions anyway. So take out, the rule is that you want to eliminate fractions. So take out the first coefficient a, factor 2 over 3 outside. So you have 1x squared left, then you have 4x, and then you have negative 12. And how is that possible? Because if you choose to multiply back, 2 over 3 times x, 2 over 3 times 4, which is 8 over 3, and 2 over 3 times negative 12 is negative 24 over 3, which is negative 8. So that makes sense, right? So now you're paying attention to this new trinomial with no fractions. So you remove the fractions first, then you start doing these questions as if you did the questions from example 1 or example 2. So quickly, product is first and last, which is negative 1 times negative 12 times positive 1. So this is the factored form, negative 2 and 6, and the sum is equal to 4. So please note at this point, negative 2 and positive 6 is a good candidate for the sum to be 4, because it is actually positive 4 when you add negative 2 and positive 6. So once you have the middle term expressed in decomposed form, you keep the fraction outside. Remember, you open a set of brackets, you bring down the first term, which is x squared. You rename 4x into the sum, negative 2x plus 4, 6, and then you copy down negative 12, and you close the brackets here. Why? Because we had this 2 over 3 as a common factor extracted already in the step above. And then you start working with this quadrinomial, two groups of 2, work with each group separately. So x squared and negative 2x, common factor is x, bingo, and you have x minus 2. You start observing that this is the pattern. The next group, 6x and negative 12, common factor is 6. Take out 6, and x minus 2 in goes into the set of brackets. And this is the step where you know you're on the right track. You have achieved a very good step by getting the same binomial. That's the key here. New binomial now becomes a common factor with the following important message, that first factor 2 over 3 stays, then you have x minus 2 as a new common factor, and then you create another set of bracket, and you bring in whatever is left, which is x plus 6. There you go. You do the check because you want to verify, you don't want to guess. We know that here in this video, we want to make sure that every time we do the questions, we want to verify. So you expand it by doing first binomial times a binomial, using the FOIL method, the strategy that you're already familiar with. And then once you do that, you simplify it by adding like terms first, and then you distribute the fraction. Then you multiply by 2/3 each term inside, and boom, you have what you wanted to achieve. So hopefully that video serves you and helped you and clarified your questions about how to factor trinomials. And we don't leave until we do practice questions, because that's the strategy. You want to learn and implement right away so that your confidence will grow. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again. Bye for now.